Welcome to Hispanic Biz, Stories of Success. We conduct interviews with successful Hispanic entrepreneurs to gather their story, to learn why they got into business, how they got into business, and how they overcame the challenges and how they've become successful. We do this in hopes that you find these stories entertaining, interesting, and inspiring. We're fortunate today to have with us an engineer, Mr. Roman Bustillos, who's president and CEO of Bustillos Engineering. Thank you, Mr. Bustillos, for your time and your dedication. I ask you, your business, you have a master's in engineering. What kind of business is it and what do you do?
Thank you very much for having me here this morning. And you're right, I am a civil engineer. I went to school here at UTEP. Our civil engineering business basically does land development. We do a lot of roadway design, water systems, wastewater systems, piping systems, stormwater systems, and we resolve a lot of land issues when it comes to land surveying. So that's basically what I do.
How many employees do you have?
We have 26 employees at present.
Big business. So let me ask you, you grew up in El Paso?
I did. I grew up in El Paso, went to school Hillside, Father Yermo, Jefferson, and Cathedral. And then I went to the Marine Corps for 4 years of active duty and 2 years of inactive duty. And then I came back to UTEP, and at UTEP I got my bachelor's and my master's.
Why did you join the Marines?
The Marines was a challenge that I needed when I was young. So,
what did that do for you?
It really instilled a tremendous amount of discipline. I was kind of a Mr. Scatterbrain back then, all over the place, but I needed something to focus that energy into. And that discipline from the Marine Corps, the teamwork, that really instilled a sense of duty in me.
Wow.
And then the honor with the Marines too.
Yeah. So that was something you were looking for, that structure.
Right. And it was precisely what helped me, I think, excel through school afterwards.
Okay, because before that you'd done some college, right?
Right. I'd done a couple of semesters and didn't know what I wanted to do, and just didn't really see the end game during that time.
So when you came back to school, you had a better sense then of what you wanted to do?
Absolutely. Yeah. During the Marine Corps, I had an opportunity to work in the electronics field, and I thought, I knew I wanted to do engineering, and back then I thought I was going to be an electrical engineer. But something unique happened when I was in Camp Pendleton, California. Mm-hmm. It's a very large base, and they have a lot of preserves, land preservations. They have a significant amount of environmental issues that I got inspired to go into environmental engineering. When I came back to UTEP didn't have an environmental engineering program. These environmental engineering programs really didn't exist around the country, but civil engineering was the closest I could come to, and I think that's what inspired me to choose civil engineering.
What year was that you got out of the service?
I got out in 1988.
And then you graduated from UTEP when?
With my bachelor's in 93 and with my master's in 95.
So you went right on and got your master's in civil engineering.
Mm-hmm.
And so as you get your degrees, you want to do engineering work. So did you get work right away?
I did. In fact, I was going to wait till after I got my master's to go to work. But a friend of mine, suggested that, she had a couple of friends that were looking for engineers, and she suggested that I work while I was going to school. And I took the opportunity. I interviewed with these two men, and next week I was working. So, wow. And that was in 1993, after my bachelor's. I had already graduated with my bachelor's.
And how do you find engineering work? Is that fulfilling for you?
It's tremendously fulfilling. It's challenging. Every day you have a different challenge. Being a small business, it's given me the opportunity to expose, the company to a variety of problems. When we do land development, you have a certain number of problems that you have to resolve. When you have pipeline problems, you have different problems. So it's continuously challenging, and not every pipeline project is exactly the same. You encounter a new issue that you have to resolve. So it's very challenging, and that's what's unique about it. It keeps it very interesting. It's not a routine type of
So
career.
were you always a problem solver?
I think I was, from the playground, trying to break up kids and, trying to resolve issues with friends and so forth. So
Tell me about your parents. What did your father do and your mother?
my parents, they were self-employed. My dad he was a butcher for a grocery store, and eventually he bought the store, and my mom, was right there with him. And so we were in the grocery store business in Lincoln, in the middle of the city. And that's where my brothers and I and my sister grew up, in the store. We continuously worked for them. I think I started working at the store when I was in second grade. So.
What was the name of the store?
Rosa Food Market.
Oh, okay.
It was on Rosa Street there.
And
in,
how many
Lincoln
brothers
City.
and sisters do you have?
I have 2 older brothers and 1 younger sister.
And so, are you in the middle? Are you the oldest?
Yeah, I'm the third of 4. I'm the
Okay.
third of 4.
Okay.
Yeah.
And what do they all do now, your brothers and sisters?
My oldest brother is a civil engineer also, and my second oldest brother, he's a securities and insurance agent, and then my younger sister is an arson investigator with the city of Dallas.
Wow.
So.
So you have. Did you start fires as a young man?
She always chased around me. Yeah, that's the joke. That's the standing joke, is that I love fires and she hated them.
She put them out for you.
Yeah.
And your mother also worked the store?
Right, she did.
So what did that do for you growing up in a family business in a grocery store?
Well, it really exposed us to what I like to label as service. My dad instilled a tremendous amount of discipline in us, back then, of a work ethic, making sure that, we always respected our customers and gave them the proper service that they needed. And, above and beyond. I mean, we used to, as checkout boys, we used to have our ties on. And
Really?
yeah, so we took pride in it. It was very
So
nice.
what kind of messages did you get from your mother and father? And
Well, first of all, I mean, they instilled in us the work ethic that you have to work. There's no such thing as, not working. You have to work hard and save. You have to save your money,
So when you were in the service, what did you carry from that?
It was unique because I did, besides being in the service, I had a couple of other jobs. I used to, slap sandwiches together and clean a sandwich shop up after work. And then I went to a club, where I was a barback. So basically I'd work till 2 in the morning,
Wow.
and then get back up at 5 the next morning to go run and
Really?
be ready for work. And so basically what that enabled me to do is save some money. So when I got out of the service, I had enough money for school, for down payment on a house.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow. So when did you get married? After college?
Actually before, it was the year that I started college, the 1988, when I got out of the Marine Corps. I worked with my parents at the store and I helped them out. And then I went to school the next year in 89, and that's the year that I got married.
Wow.
1989.
And you were able to buy a house?
Yes. Yeah, that was
Because you saved?
well, because we saved. I should say my wife was
Okay.
pretty thrifty as well.
Oh, wow.
So
And your mother and father, they still operate the store, or?
they retired, and then they went back to, well, my father is the one that's running the store now, and he got bored in retirement, and he decided, to challenge himself. So he reduced the footprint of the store, and he mans it. So
That's great.
yeah.
Good life.
Yeah,
Good life.
it is.
And how many children do you have?
I have one daughter. She's 15 years old, and she's a sophomore at Loretto High School.
Does she like engineering?
You know, she appreciates it, she likes it, but I think she's a little more focused now, and she wants to pursue a career in medicine, is what she's told us so far. But, you know, we still have a ways to go, I think.
So, in talking about your work history, while you were in school, after you got your degree, you went to work, and you worked on your master's while you were working?
Yes. Uh-huh.
And you were working full-time?
Yeah, I was working full-time, and luckily, most of my classes started at 4:30, 6 o'clock in the evening, and that was pretty flexible. My employers were very flexible with me to get it done. There was maybe one semester that I missed where we had a lot of deadlines during that time period, and I had to basically focus on school. So I took one semester off. So I could have actually graduated in '94.
Oh, okay.
So with my master's.
And so you get your master's. What did that do to your work? Did that improve your opportunities, having a master's?
I would say it did, because in terms of qualifications, it shows that you have a little bit more drive, you know, to pursue educational challenges. And so I think it does in that sense. You know, it's something that you need to continuously do with your education. You need to, you know, stay current with your issues in your industry. No matter what industry it is, you have to be on top of them.
Let me ask you the difference between, in your field of engineering, the difference between having the bachelor's, having the master's. How much of a knowledge distance is that? Is it a huge distance?
Not really, because when you graduate with your bachelor's in any engineering, civil engineering, electrical engineering, mechanical engineering, or industrial engineering, you're going to have the basis of everything that you need right there. Every job that everyone starts, it's a new experience. So what I would say is that the education, while it does help you basically get a better job somewhere, the experience is by far more important in engineering, because the number of problems that you're exposed to and you can solve, I think that's what really builds an engineer.
Did the master's give you more skill?
I think so. Yeah, in the sense that it was a skill that basically I had to read before I experienced it.
Okay, I appreciate that.
So,
and so what kind of engineering were you doing when you were working? But at that time, when you got your master's, what kind?
The very first job that I got was a sanitary sewer system, and it was the first of its kind in the Lower Valley Water District. The Lower Valley Water District had been developed for basically the city of Socorro and San Elizario, and it was to address the issue with the colonias not having potable water and sewer. The company that I was working with was fortunate enough to be involved in developing a lot of the water distribution systems, and this was the very first sanitary sewer system that was developed for the Lower Valley Water District.
Who is that you were working for?
I was working with Moreno Cardenas. There were two engineers, Robert Moreno and Joe Cardenas, and they pretty much served as mentors for me during that time. They were Hispanic, and they had a small business here in El Paso too, and they had just started their business 3 years before I started working with them.
How important was it for you that they were Hispanic?
It was very important, because they were very successful, very intelligent, and they really served as great mentors in the sense that I knew that, you know, Hispanic people can run an engineering business here in El Paso especially.
So it was important for you to see that?
Oh, absolutely, and experience it. You know, I was basically on the ground floor to a successful company. So it was very productive in my life.
Did that inspire you?
Oh, absolutely, it sure did. In fact, I would have probably been their partner now, but you know, I think I grew too fast. You know, I grew too fast, and I wanted control. I wanted to, you know, my hands on the steering wheel, if you want to say.
So
that.
how long did you work for them?
I worked for them almost 5 years. almost
Okay.
5 years.
And is that then you got the entrepreneurial bug? You got bit by the.
I think I always had it, you know,
Uh-huh.
with my parents' inspiration. You know, you could run a business. I knew how to, you know, I knew the accounting system from my parents, and then I knew the accounting system, you know, basically for a business. So that wasn't it wasn't too much of a jump.
So it was a lot about who you are then,
Right, I guess.
having that entrepreneur. So how did you start your business then? What?
Actually, a friend of mine, two friends of mine, one of them was retiring, and the other one they had had a discussion, and he invited me to go in with him and buy a retiring engineer's business. So what we did is we met for a few months, and we went over the numbers. We calculated what we thought would be, you know, the best options, you know, what markets to focus in on, and developed our business plan. And then we made a decision that we were going to do it. And that was 14 and a half years ago.
So you started with the business plan?
We did. Yeah, absolutely. We sat down, we would meet on weekends, and you know, we had notebooks. We each had our notebook, and we'd write down what our objectives were. You know, well, back then when you start, you just want to be successful. You don't know what it really means to be successful. You don't anticipate failure, but you just say, I want to be successful. And that's kind of where you start at, and then you write down, you know, well, how am I going to be successful? And you list the clients that you know and the clients that you think that could benefit from your services.
So you buy an existing business, has existing employees. Did you inherit the employees and the contracts?
We did, and we started off with, we inherited 10 employees, and luckily for us, my predecessor, Bill Fott, stayed on with us to guide us. You know, it was basically, we always joke that it was like jumping on a fast-moving train, and then getting to the, you know, crawling to the engine to try to get control of it, because it was a challenge. You know, it was a little bit more challenging than just starting your own business, because
Do you mind explaining that a little bit? Because that's interesting. That's
because as an existing business, they already had their own objectives. They already had their goals, and they had their clientele and the quality of service that they represented. And Bill Fott had a good reputation. So it was, you know, to our surprise, it was a notch higher than what we had thought that it would be, that our service should be. And so we quickly, that's one thing about, you know, starting a business or getting into a business, is you have to quickly adapt to the situation, and you have to understand quickly, and then react quickly.
But you had a partner.
But I had a partner, exactly, and that's the thing, is that we had each other's back, and we were committed to each other. We were great friends. I mean, I actually met him when I was in college. You know, he was a little bit older than me, 5 years older than me, and so he was already in engineering when I was in college.
He was already working
Mm-hmm.
as an engineer.
Yeah.
What's his name?
Randy Brock.
Ah.
Randy Brock.
And what are his strengths?
His strengths are management. I think management and financial understanding. I think that's one of the things that, in terms of engineering financing, that he has shown me over the past 15 years, because we used to work on projects together also. And then the water industry is really his niche, and he's really helped us grow in that area.
And what are your strengths?
My strengths now, I think, are motivation, and I think I see a little bit ahead of time, you know, what's coming up, what the trends are. I'm able to solve big picture items. I'm able to see the big picture when it comes to it, and I'm able to orchestrate and manage at a higher level. I can organize teams. I can instruct teams on, what they need to do, and then synthesize all the teams together as a combined team.
So by having a partner, you can focus on the entrepreneurial side of the business, and your partner focuses a lot on the management side.
Right.
Is that fair?
That's fair. I have 2 other partners as well now. They're junior partners, and one of them, Sergio Adame, is our VP for engineering. So then he's able to manage and direct the engineering side, and then Aaron Alvarado, he's a surveyor. He's able to manage and direct the surveying side of it. So I think, with a few more years, they're able to transition over to, full partners. I think they do a tremendous job, and they've been with us. Aaron's been with us for actually 16 years. He started there before Randy and I started.
Okay.
He was one of the inherited employees.
Okay. Wow.
And then Sergio Dam has been with us 15 years.
So if you had started your business without buying an existing business, you're indicating that the challenges were different by an existing business.
Right.
What kind of challenges were those?
Initially, and this is where, and we've thought about it long and hard. We've had discussions about this, and if in buying your own business, well, you have to have the capital to come in and buy it, and then secondly, you have to have a certain amount of, I would call it credit or respect, in terms that you are going to be able to handle that type of business, as opposed to when you start your own business, from the ground up. Well, you're going to need financing too, and in that case, it's all up to you. I mean, it's the amount of energy you pour into the company. That's what's going to develop. In terms of having other employees, you're going to have to start hiring them as you get work. Then you start hiring them, and so I think your time is occupied with, doing the work, looking for the work, and then looking for resources, and then managing those resources. So I think it's a little harder. So my hat off to those people that have done it.
So you buy an existing business, you have the owner of the business you bought help you and guide you through. You had employees and you had contracts.
Right. It's a good start.
But it wasn't easy.
No, it still wasn't easy. No, because you have to learn. You have to learn, first of all, how to manage the existing contracts. You have to get introduced into the scheme of, well, this is the process that's happening. So it is learning a new system, and it, at the same time, while you may know some of these clients already, and that's what the case was with us, is that some of the clients that we knew were some of the contracts that he had, so those were the ones that we were able to migrate easily into. Now, the new clients, well, it was a matter of having meetings with them, handshakes, introducing ourselves, getting to know ourselves, and then, moving on from there. And we still have a large number of people that we met through Bill Fott, and they're still our clients to this day.
When you took over, though, you and your partner had developed a business plan. In developing that business plan, you had a mission or purpose that may have been different from the existing business. Did that cause any difficulty when you came in with the new employees?
No, and it wasn't too different. It wasn't too different because we had seen what their objectives were. We read them, and we understood what they were. Well, we thought we understood what they were, but in action, something written is a little bit different. Well, the objective and the goal is still the same. It's just, you go about it a different way. You have to, the level of service that you provide to these clients, the way you speak to the clients, the way that you address them and manage their projects. That's in the way that it was different. And since we both came from different companies, we had similar objectives and goals at our companies, our respective companies, but we did it differently. just a little bit differently. And I'm not going to say that one way is better than the other. I'm just going to say that it's different, and it's just a different approach. And that's what I think was a little bit different. And, soon we learned that the business plan that we had, well, it was kind of, okay, back to the drawing board. But at the time, you're working, and, you're tending to different fires at the office. So that task itself gets pushed to the wayside.
So how long did it take you to realize that your stamp on the business changed the business, and it was important for you to have your identity as a business owners?
It took us, I think we noticed it immediately, because even clients told us, when are you going to change the name?
Ah.
And we thought, well, we weren't sure, and at the same time, we weren't focused on having our name on the business. It didn't really mean anything at the time, that we should do that. And I think it took us about the third year. The third year, that's when we transitioned over. We had actually started the second year, and then letting clients know, okay, we're going to change our name, just to make sure that they don't see that abrupt change, and they panic. And some clients, we've heard that some clients panic like that, but we didn't experience any of that.
So you staged the name change.
Right. But we made sure that all the clients were fine with it. And then, we had discussions, and they knew by that time, by the second year, they knew who we were, that we were the owners of the company, so they had no problem with it.
And employees, did they have, did they go through changes as the ownership changed?
They did. Definitely the initial employees were used to a certain, style of management, and when we came in, we were a little bit more flexible and more challenging at the same time, because we expected them to know more, the employees. So they were caught in I think, a transition where, I have to step it up in terms of what I know.
Because your expectations were different.
Exactly.
Wow. So the challenges of buying a business are different than if you start a business from the ground up. It's kind of assumed that when you buy an existing business, you're on a smoother road. You're kind of indicating still has some difficulties and some identity problems. Let me ask you, Mr. Bustillos, about the kind of business that you do. What kind of customers do you have, and what do you do for your customers?
A lot of our clients are basic municipalities, the city of El Paso, the El Paso Water Utilities, Lower Valley Water District, the town of Van Horn. They're municipalities, so they're government-run entities. And then on the private side, we have a lot of private developers, commercial developers, residential developers, and that's basically the way we address each individual's problems or needs. Is basically twofold. First of all, they typically, especially the municipalities, have their money that is allocated for a certain project. So you've got to follow the project requirements. And secondly, you have to introduce the best management practices that you can for developing a proper solution for their problem.
So what kinds of, what's involved in your engineering for the municipalities? What do you do for them?
One of the large projects that we just finished designing was the Butterfield Trail Industrial Park revitalization project. And what it is it's a revitalization of the streets and the landscape for that Butterfield Industrial Park area just north of the airport. It's a 600-acre industrial park. There are a lot of warehouses there. There's a lot of shipping industry that happens that's close by the airport, so they can immediately ship it overseas or to the rest of the nation. So one of the projects that we did is we revitalized and we engineered the streets we reconstructed, or we designed the reconstruction of the streets to best fit what the park needs now, and the revitalization is for the future, for the next 30 years, hopefully. That's something we look at. So we go in there and we do intensive investigations of the existing asphalt or concrete, if there's any. The median landscaping, we take an inventory of it to see what's there, what needs to be replaced, what needs to be enhanced, and then also the widths of the streets. Over the past 30 years, the city and the airport has gotten into a point where they're maintaining an extremely large width of pavement. And so what happens is that we're able to minimize exactly what street width you need, and that has a lot to do with the current smart codes and the smart growth philosophies. And so we're able to reduce that footprint of the street width and introduce more aesthetic elements to the side that help with what we call low impact development for stormwater runoff, and allowing more permeable areas for that water to sink, reducing the required infrastructure that, to capture that stormwater. And at the same time, you manage traffic in a very uniform fashion. We also introduced 4 roundabouts in that industrial park. People, initially they're afraid of roundabouts. They think, they don't know how to handle them, but they're very easy. If you take the one at UTEP, it's very, very manageable and very efficient. And so we're going to introduce that into the park. So that's one of the projects that we just did. So that's similar to what we do for our clients.
So how many divisions do you have in your company?
Well, basically we have land development, we have roadway design, we have land surveying, we have water resources and wastewater resources and stormwater resources. And then we also do a lot of the land development in terms of zoning, rezoning, and replatting.
I want to ask you about growth, but before I do, I know that you serve on a lot of committees and have served with the city, and because you contribute a lot to the community. What kind of committees did you serve on?
I was the chairman of the City Planning Commission back in 2006, 2004, and then I was also the chair for the Building and Standards Commission, and then I served as a member for the Airport Advisory Board, and then I also served on the technical side, the Texas Society of Professional Engineers. I'm a past president, and also served with the American Society of Civil Engineers, and with the Texas Society of Professional Engineers, I was the regional, the El Paso chapter vice president for the state, for state affairs.
So you've served local and statewide.
Well, yeah, yes, I have.
And you also serve on UTEP's boards? Do you serve on any?
No, I haven't had the opportunity to serve on UTEP's boards yet. So,
Okay.
the one that's people have been asking me to help them is with the alumni.
Yeah, because you're a big fan.
Well, I am a big fan.
Yeah.
And then the engineering alumni group is pretty forward thinking, and I think they're headed in the right direction.
Well, you're a young man. How many years have you been engineering?
I've been in engineering for 19 years now.
Wow. So when you'd been engineering for several years before you bought your company, and you and your partner started Roman Bustillos. What kind of growth challenges did you face after buying the existing company?
One was to search out other clients. The existing clients were, similar clients to what we had before, but then the new clients that we were introduced to was a step up. But then we saw that we had to expand as a business. In order to stay alive, you have to continue growing. And back then, one of the good contracts that we had was with the El Paso Natural Gas. As you know, they moved out of El Paso, and they moved to Houston and Colorado, and so we basically followed them, and we did a lot of work for them in Arizona, in New Mexico, and in Texas.
So, where did you get support for your growth? Did you, like financial support, was that easy to come by?
The banks, it's funny because the first two banks that we spoke to, they wouldn't even, think of us. We had bought an existing business that had been around since 1967. They saw it as a new venture, new management. So they really didn't. They really didn't want to deal with a new company. It was difficult. It was difficult getting money. Eventually, I think we found an outside, somebody from out of town that was willing to invest in us, and then we went through the Small Business Association administration, and we SBA loan. We got an SBA loan, and then we were able to, I think, move ahead. But once that, it seemed like that once SBA took a chance on us, other banks were then willing. And at the same time, I think that was around the time when a certain mayor, had a lot to do with getting access to. He had an issue about local businesses having access to capital, and I think that changed the bank's mentality a little bit.
What was that about? Can you describe that a little bit?
Well, the challenge was businesses like us, small businesses, especially on the professional side, that you wouldn't be able to get loans from the banks. So, and what were the reasons? Well, you just didn't have enough experience. You didn't have enough equity in your own company. And so it was difficult to get, the revolving loans or any type of lines of credit, to make payroll or to buy equipment to expand the company. It was kind of difficult in that time.
And so the mayor was vocal about
encouraging
banks?
This was Mayor Caballero. I don't know if you remember.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
He had a group of, they did a research on the access to capital, and they had found that El Paso banks weren't lending to El Paso businesses.
Yeah, they started community scholars, which were high school students.
Mm-hmm.
They did research, and they have a report on bank lending, and found that banks were not lending to local businesses. And then the banks went to UTEP to do a study, and UTEP comes out with a study and says, well, the businesses don't have the background, the credit history, and all of that. Do you think some of that non-lending or difficulty had any? Do you think being Hispanic was a factor at all?
I would say yes, because as being Hispanic myself, I have an Anglo partner, and we were balanced. It seemed like, but I have seen other people that are Hispanic that had tremendous difficulties in getting loans from any bank, and one of the issues that they would always comment on is because I'm Hispanic, because I'm Mexican American.
Was it a surprise to you, buying a business that's been in business since the '60s, a good business, a well-known business, that now you go to the banks and they look at you as a new business?
Yeah.
Was that a surprise?
It was a surprise. It really was a surprise. And fortunately, in our case, I mean, the bank that we eventually stayed with was a local bank. And when they looked at our personal credit histories, I think they changed their tune. And I think that's what got them more interested in lending us money, because we were financially, sound individuals.
Let me ask you about business skills. Both you and your partner are trained in engineering. You've indicated your partner is very good with finance. But how did you learn to run a business? Where did you learn to run a business?
Oh, I think that stemmed from my childhood at the store with my parents. I understood, what it took to balance at the end of the day. I understood the nature of the sales, and the markups for just the groceries in general. So I understood the financial elements of the business very well by then. In terms of in the engineering business, it's a little bit different. You have your invoicing periods, you have your collection periods, and so that's where it's a little bit different. The engineering business is a little bit different because there's a time lag from invoicing to collecting your money. So you have to think at least 30 to 90 days, in advance to, what the work you do today, you may not get paid for until 90 days.
Let me ask you about the time you spend in running your business. What percentage of the time would you say you do engineering, and what percent of the time do you do business?
It's half and half right now. It's half and half. I generally work about 60 hours a week, so it's about 30 and 30. 30
Wow.
hours and 30 hours.
And when you're doing business, what are you doing?
First of all, I guess I'm looking for work. When you're busy, well, you have to start looking for work, because when you get done with that project, well, then you're going to have people idling. You can't have people idling. You have to look forward to the next project. You have to look at what's out there, what's coming up on basically the radar, and you have to make decisions about, okay, is this something we can chase? Is it something that we can team up with somebody else to strengthen our team? Or is this something that we can just provide a small support element to it? And we make those decisions, and depending on how our resources are at that time and the projections for the next 4 months, then we can move forward and make a decision on that. Like, well, this is what I need to chase. And
what are the skills that you find today very valuable to you that you learned as a young person? Do those come across clear to you sometimes?
I think you have to be internally driven. In any business, I think you have to be internally driven. That is number one. You have to have that continuous drive. And in terms of your own business, you don't expect anybody to pat you on the back and tell you, good job. You just move on to the next one. You move on to the next one, and you try to, make it better. You learn from it. How do I do it better? How do I increase productivity? How do I make the next project more efficient? So forth. I think that those are the key elements that you need to have, that consistent self-improvement drive inside you.
So what value does that drive bring to when you face a challenge? What kind of challenges do you face in your business?
Some of the challenges is scheduling. Probably scheduling is the biggest thing, because a lot of clients, they need their improvements, tomorrow. And sometimes because of their funding or their procurement services, they basically get stuck in month to 6 months of delay. So when they finally get up to selecting the engineer to do the project, you've got 30 days to do something. And a lot of the times, since a lot of especially the public clients, since they have directives already, and you would think that they would have a structured plan in place that is backed up by a study or a major improvement study or feasibility study that tells them or directs them on which approach to go. A lot of the times they don't have those, or they don't have the luxury to have those type of feasibility studies ahead of the projects. And the key to those feasibility studies is that it gives you a better guidance as to how to approach this. So if you don't have that, and then you give the engineer the project, here it is, you're depending on his experience. And a lot of the time, that's why, we'll look at something and say, well, this is pretty easy. This is the way you approach it. You typically, look at one or two or three types of options, and then you basically see what the impact will be, number one, to the longevity of the project, and then secondly, the financial impact of the project, and you try to balance them. And then you recommend to the client, well, this is what I recommend because of such reasons. And so that's probably one of the things that we have to do that so quickly within a small design time frame. I think that's one of the biggest challenges.
And so how do you face that? How do you overcome that?
You just move forward. I have a saying at the office, what are you doing between midnight and 6 a.m., And that's one thing, is that you have to be committed to a project. When you get a project, the client is trusting you to get it done. So a lot of the times, I think that's where those wheels, those design wheels, that's what my partners and I do most of the time. And then so the next morning when the guys come to work, all right, this is what you've got to do.
As you're talking, I'm beginning to see the value of the kind of service that you do. You're preparing the foundation of a large infrastructure project that municipalities, your private clients, really need. Before they put a building, before they put anything, you're doing the design, and so they depend on you. Is that a huge weight on your shoulders, on the shoulders of your associates and your employees?
I wouldn't call it a weight. I really call it a challenge, because it's what we want to do. First of all, we've chosen this profession to be right there and be able to solve those issues. I mean, we feel confident enough to be able to do that. So, no, we welcome it. It's not a weight. It's a pressure, but it's a manageable pressure.
So one of the issues that's critical to your business is your level of competence.
Right.
How have you, and how do you keep up with that?
It's easy. You just read. You have to continuously read up on everything. And I named several of the disciplines that we do. So you have to stay current. With the journals, you have to go to conferences, and we do that every year. I mean, 3 or 4 times a year we go on conferences. We look at what's happening in terms of regulatory elements that are coming up, so we have to stay ahead of those requirements. And then also innovations in design, and a lot of it you see with the smart code. You see a lot of, you keep hearing green. Well, the way to get green is obviously you have to design it into your projects. And for example, one of the things that we have is low impact development. We started going to school and the conferences for that about 3 years ago, and so we're very aware of the requirements and the innovations that are happening with the low impact development. That's one of the areas that I think that we've excelled in here recently with our projects, as it's going to be demonstrated with the Butterfield Trail Industrial Park.
So what have you learned from serving on these committees, the City Plan Commission and the zoning, all those committees? What have you learned from that? The
City Planning Commission was probably the most eye-opening commission that I was on. You get to see everything that's happening at, on the development side, in terms of the ordinance side. You're able to see how everything fits together here at the city. You continuously see the push between private development and public regulation. You see that back and forth that they have. You see a lot of the issues that govern developers that they're not happy about. Stormwater fees, signing restrictions. So that's very useful. So I would recommend to everybody that they volunteer for a board and then a commission, and just get your feet wet with the one board. Start off slow and then build your way up. because it really gives you a good grasp of what the city staff has to go through. You know, the steps that they have to take. They have to prepare, cases, so that the commissions and the boards can vote upon. And then eventually, city council may have to vote on these.
So let me ask you about your growth plans. How are you looking to growth? What's ahead?
What's ahead? Well, with the housing market the way it was, as you understand, residential development has been in a lull here for the past few years. If and when it comes up, I think that we should be poised to move forward into supplying those services for a lot of the local developers, and also Arizona. We really like Arizona. I mean, that's been one of our mainstays for the past several years, except for the past 3 years, but we like Arizona quite a bit. So,
do you have an office in Arizona?
No, we don't. In fact, we were planning on opening our office. We had discussed it for about 2 years, and right about when we were, still in that planning phase, that's when the ceiling fell out from under the housing market in Arizona, and made the decision for us. We weren't going to invest in a dropping market.
So what would you say your strengths are today that you didn't have when you first bought the business?
I've been exposed to a little bit of everything, and then some. And I think I'm able to see, in terms of kind of like the forest, I'm able to see the forest, and I understand how a project fits into the overall master plan of the city. That's probably the biggest thing that I learned from the City Planning Commission is, the master plan. And I understood the master plan, the impacts of developments into the master plan, and how to improve it. So when we take projects to the city now, I mean, we're able to enhance it. We're able to, what we always call, and a couple of friends of ours, colleagues, we do the N+1 theory. We try to up it a little bit. We always try to up the quality or how the project will fit into the city.
So do you have a master plan for your business?
For our business, yes, we do have a plan, and at this point, we're still seeing, we're dependent upon market conditions. In the past, while private development suffered, or not suffered but paused, then the municipalities would move forward. But these past few years, even municipalities, were stuck in their budgets. So both of them stalled at the same time. And that was difficult.
So usually one or the other, but
right.
So what advice would you give a young entrepreneur today?
Number one, you got to be ready to work. I mean, you have to have this drive to want to be there. And initially, whatever it takes is what you're going to have to do. Same time, you need the support from your family. If you're married, you have to have that understanding. You have another partner always with your spouse, and a lot of the time they're able to support you in terms of how much time you work. Set up a space at home where you can go home, be with, in my case, my daughter. Make sure that homework gets done, say the prayers, go to sleep, and then go to work. And right there in your office, you're able to manage that. I think that's what helped me work those long hours, is that I had my little office there at the house, so I was able to get extra work done. Because as a business owner, you're gonna have to get it done. If you want to succeed, you have to get it done. That's the trust that you earn from the clients.
Well, it's a fascinating story, and I really, really appreciate your sharing that. It's been certainly an educational experience for me to hear your story, and I hope it's been somewhat interesting for you to tell your story.
Absolutely. You don't sit there and go to work and plan to write the story. It just happens, you know. You have a goal, and you don't think it's interesting to other people. You're just going about your life.
Well, it's certainly interesting and certainly worthwhile, and I really, really appreciate your taking time, Mr. Bustillos, to tell us your story. And I hope for our viewers that they find these stories useful, inspirational, encouraging. We do these because we believe the stories are valuable for our community as we gather these stories from successful Hispanic entrepreneurs. We thank you for watching and ask you to look forward to our next presentation. Have a good day. Thank you.